I never thought a simple walk with my dogs could transform into something so deeply unsettling. It started off like any other evening. My girlfriend had been through a traumatic accident a few weeks earlier, a fall from a horse that left her with broken bones and a fractured leg. She was confined to a bed, helpless, and the weight of it fell entirely on me. I became her caretaker, trying to balance my own life with the needs of hers. The days blurred together. I found myself taking care of everything: cooking, cleaning, managing the dogs, and trying to keep up with my own responsibilities. It was exhausting, but I didn't complain. I loved her, and I knew she needed me. But as the weeks wore on, I found myself slipping into exhaustion, both mentally and physically. That evening was particularly heavy. The house felt stifling after dinner, and the dogs, restless as always, began pacing around, their barks growing louder and more urgent. I knew they needed their walk, and I was desperate for a break. The green line, the long, tree-lined path in our neighborhood, was always my go-to. It was the perfect place for a peaceful walk, away from the noise of the city. There, I could clear my mind and breathe. It had always been a place of calm, and I looked forward to the familiar routine. But that night, the air felt different. As I stepped outside, the familiar sounds of the neighborhood seemed muffled, like someone had turned the volume down on the world. The usual chatter of distant voices, the hum of passing cars, and the rustling of leaves were replaced with an oppressive silence. My dogs, normally so eager to trot along, were hesitant. Their tails were low, their ears perked, their noses twitching in the air as though they sensed something I couldn't. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just tired. The walk would do me good. I tugged at the leashes, urging them forward. But they were on edge, their steps quick and uncertain. I had never seen them act like this before, and I couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. The evening had taken on a strange, heavy quality, like the world was holding its breath. As I walked down the path, I saw a figure in the distance. A tall man, standing just beyond the reach of the streetlights, seemingly in the middle of the path. At first, I thought it was just someone out for a late-night walk, but as he came closer, my unease grew. He wasn't walking like a normal person. His movements were slow, deliberate, like each step was measured, as though he were trying to avoid making any sound. It was as if he were floating rather than walking, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was studying me. I looked down at the dogs. They were now pulling at their leashes, growling low in their throats. I tried to calm them, but their nervous energy only mirrored my own growing panic. As the man drew closer, I could see that he was holding something in his arms. My first thought was that it was a baby. But as he got even closer, the hairs on my neck stood up. Something was wrong. The object in his arms wasn't a baby, it was too stiff, too rigid. It wasn't moving. I squinted, trying to make it out, but the closer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. It wasn't a baby. It wasn't a child at all. It looked like a doll, but not any doll I had ever seen. It was pale, lifeless, and its proportions were all wrong, like something was off with its shape. It was just wrong. And then I realized it wasn't just the object that disturbed me. It was the way the man held it. His grip was too tight, as if he were cradling something fragile, something too delicate to be real. It felt like he wasn't holding anything human. My heart was pounding in my chest. Every step I took felt like a step into something dark and unexplainable. I could feel my hands growing cold, my legs stiffening. But the worst part was his face. When I saw his face, it sent a jolt of pure terror through me. There was no emotion there. Nothing. His expression was flat, blank, completely devoid of any human warmth. His eyes, wide open, were fixed on me. They didn't blink. They just stared at me, cold, empty, lifeless. I tried to walk past him, telling myself to stay calm. I quickened my pace, urging the dogs forward, but they resisted, their bodies stiff, their movements jerky. I could hear them whimpering in fear, their nails scraping on the pavement as they fought against the leash. The man didn't move. He didn't even acknowledge us as we passed by him. His gaze never shifted, his eyes never left me. I couldn't look away. It felt like something was holding me in place, like I was trapped in his stare. When I finally managed to pull the dogs away, I forced myself to walk faster. I had to get away from him. But as I glanced back, I saw him standing in the same spot, under the dim light of the street lamp. He hadn't moved. He was still holding that thing, his arms straight, the object suspended like a lifeless, inanimate thing. And his eyes, they were locked on me. Not a flicker of emotion in them. No recognition. Just a cold, unfeeling stare. I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest. My breath quickened. I turned away, trying to push my legs into motion, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was following me. It was as if he was still right behind me, watching me, even though I hadn't heard a single step from him. I reached for my phone, hands trembling, and dialed my girlfriend. The moment the line connected, I blurted, "Stay on the phone with me. Don't hang up. Please." Her voice was filled with confusion and concern. "What's going on? Are you okay?" There's someone here. Someone on the green line. I don't know who he is, but he's just standing there. He's holding something, and it's not right. I need you to stay on the line. This isn't normal." I kept walking faster, barely hearing her response through the ringing in my ears. The dogs were tugging on their leashes now, dragging me forward as if they too wanted to escape the unsettling presence. With every step, the air felt thicker. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my heart pounded in my throat. I glanced back again, praying he wouldn't be there. But when I did, he was still there. Under the same streetlight. Still staring. Like he was waiting for something, waiting for me to make a mistake, to turn around, to react. I couldn't breathe. I needed to get home, to safety. I walked faster, almost at a run now, my eyes darting from side to side, checking every shadow, every corner. I didn't look back again until I reached my house. The door slammed shut behind me, and I leaned against it, gasping for air. "Is he still there?" my girlfriend asked, her voice filled with panic. "No, he's gone," I said, but even as I said the words, I didn't believe them. I didn't believe it for a second. My mind was racing. The figure in the streetlight, that cold, lifeless stare, it felt like he had never been there. It felt like I had just walked through something that wasn't real. I called the police immediately, my hands shaking. I told them everything. About the man. About what I had seen. But the dispatcher barely seemed to care. "It's probably just some guy out for a walk," she said dismissively. "Nothing to worry about." But I knew better. I knew there was something wrong. It wasn't just a man. It was something darker. Something else. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, those eyes, so wide and unblinking, following me from the shadows. Even now, days later, I can still feel that gaze, cold and unrelenting, like it's burned into my mind. The worst part is that I don't know if it was real or if it was some kind of waking nightmare. I'll never walk the green line again. Not without wondering if he's still out there. Waiting. Watching. It was a crisp, warm Friday afternoon when this all happened. A day just like any other, but the kind that would linger in my mind forever. In middle school, there was a special tradition that everyone looked forward to. If you had parental permission, you could leave campus during lunch and roam around the neighborhood for an hour before returning to class. Most kids would head to the fast food joints or the convenience store down the street, but my two best friends and I, we had a different idea. We always craved something a little more offbeat. That day, we decided to grab Chinese takeout from the local strip mall and head to the nearby park. It was a sunny, clear day, and the promise of freedom, however brief, felt liberating. There was no pressure to be anything but ourselves, no teachers, no homework, no rules. Just the three of us, hanging out, away from the rigidity of school life. The park was large, with wide, open spaces and a huge play structure in the middle, this towering treehouse made of wood and metal that looked more like a fort than a playground. It was the perfect spot to eat our food and escape. We claimed it as our own, scaling the steps, settling into the open space on top of the structure, and watching the world go by. We were so used to this park that it had become our sanctuary. There was a peacefulness to it, a sense of safety that made it feel like nothing bad could happen. But that day, something felt different. We were laughing about some silly thing when a strange chill seemed to hang in the air. I don't know how to explain it, but the atmosphere shifted. My stomach tightened, and it wasn't just because of the Chinese food sitting heavy in my gut. I could feel it, something was off. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But when I glanced over the edge of the treehouse, I saw her. An old woman. She appeared from the creek, which ran at the bottom of the park. It was a narrow, rocky stream that meandered through the trees and under a bridge, the kind of place kids would sometimes skip stones. But this woman, she was something else entirely. She was walking toward us, slowly, leaning heavily on a walker. But what struck me was that the creek was uneven and rocky, and getting down there with a walker seemed impossible. The path was steep and dangerous, filled with uneven stones. How could someone that frail possibly navigate such terrain? I tried to shake off the thought, but then the details started to pile up, each one making me feel more and more uneasy. The woman was wearing too many clothes for a warm day. Layers of thick, oversized garments that seemed out of place, like she was trying to hide something, or perhaps trying to keep herself wrapped in a cocoon. Her large, dark sunglasses obscured most of her face, but I could still make out the contours of her skin. She looked ancient, her face was heavily wrinkled, her hair thin and wispy. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold: her smile. It was wrong. Too wide, too stiff. It didn't belong on her face. It was the kind of smile you'd see on a puppet, the kind that didn't feel real. And her teeth, those teeth were unnaturally perfect. They gleamed in the sunlight, almost too white, like they'd been sculpted. No elderly person I knew had teeth that pristine. She continued to move toward us, her walker tapping against the pavement with each step. But I couldn't take my eyes off her. The way she walked, it wasn't slow, like you'd expect from someone of her age. It was deliberate, as though each step was part of a performance. My friends had stopped talking. I could feel their eyes on me, and I could tell they were just as confused and unsettled as I was. When she reached the base of the treehouse, she stopped. Right under it. She just stood there, looking up at us. The weirdness of the situation hit me like a slap in the face. Why was she standing there? Why was she looking at us? Her gaze felt too piercing, too intentional. It wasn't casual, it was as if she was waiting for something. The air felt thick, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. I could see my friends shifting uncomfortably, unsure of what to do. One of them, Rachel, seemed to snap out of her trance first. Her eyes darted to her phone, and without missing a beat, she held it up to her ear and spoke into it loudly. "My dad's here to pick us up," she said, her voice shaking just a little too much for it to seem casual. And then something happened that completely shattered the bizarre reality of the moment. The old woman who I had thought was so frail, so incapable of moving with any agility, stood up straight. No hunch, no trembling. Her back straightened with a suddenness that was almost unnatural. And then, With no warning, she tossed the walker aside as if it were a toy, her movements fluid and swift. Before I could even process what was happening, she was sprinting away from us, her body moving like that of an athlete, like someone far younger and stronger than the woman we had just seen. It was like a switch had been flipped, and she went from a frail, aging person to a creature moving with terrifying speed and precision. She vanished into the trees behind the abandoned hotel across the park, disappearing into the shadows in a blink. We just sat there, completely frozen. What had just happened? Our minds couldn't keep up with the rapid succession of events. One moment she was a trembling old woman, and the next, she was gone, running away with a speed I couldn't even comprehend. We all stared at the spot where she had been standing, too stunned to speak. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. Rachel was the first to break the silence. What the hell was that? None of us had an answer. We all had the same thought, though. What we had just seen couldn't have been real. It didn't make sense. How could a frail woman with a walker move so quickly? How could she have just disappeared like that? As we sat there, we began piecing things together. We all remembered the rumors we'd heard about the abandoned hotel across the park. It had been empty for years, but strange things had been whispered about it. People said it was haunted, that strange figures were seen moving around at night. It was the kind of place that made you feel like something wasn't quite right even in broad daylight. We began to wonder if that woman or whatever she was had come from there. Maybe it wasn't a woman at all. Maybe it was someone or something disguised, someone trying to lure us closer, to trap us in some twisted game. The thought sent a chill down my spine, and I suddenly felt a deep, primal fear I couldn't explain. What if we hadn't scared it off? What if we hadn't made him think we were leaving? Would we have been trapped in whatever twisted reality this creature had dragged us into? I can't say for certain what happened that day, but I know this much: I've never looked at that park the same way again. Every time I walk past the creek, I can't help but glance toward the abandoned hotel, wondering if something is still out there. And I'll always remember the feeling of that smile, the stiff, too perfect smile burned into my memory, reminding me that sometimes, the things we see are just the beginning of something much darker. What if we hadn't scared it off? What if we had been its next victims? It's a question that haunts me to this day.